At least 17 people have been killed in a shooting at a high school in Florida. The gunman was identified as Nicholas Cruz, who previously attended the school and was expelled for unspecified disciplinary reasons. The firing took place shortly before dismissal at the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland. What you can see are live visuals coming in from the high school at the moment. 12 of the dead were killed inside the school building, 2 others outside, while 1 more on the street, and 2 other victims died of their injuries at a hospital. And let's listen in to what the sheriff of Florida has to say.
He's 19 years old. He was born in 1998 in September. He was a former student of Douglas High School. He got expelled for disciplinary reasons. I don't know the specifics. I think he might have surfaced at Taravella High School. We're still trying to confirm that.
Police say victims comprised a mixture of students and adults. This comes as an 18th incident of shooting in a U.S. school amid nationwide debate over gun control.
I believe there will be one. So our investigators have, that's a great question. Our investigators have certainly began dissecting social media and looking at the website and the Nicholas, I think we spell his name Nikolas, Cruz, was the killer. He is in custody, and we've already began to dissect his websites and the things that social media that he was on, and some of the things that have come to mind are very, very disturbing.
And U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump tweeted on the tragedy. Trump said he's working closely with Florida governor and monitoring the situation. And now bringing us live information from Chicago is our correspondent Andy Rosgan joining us live. Andy, what is the current situation out there? We just heard what the sheriff had to say. Is the situation under control, and what is the action that the school authorities are taking?
Yes, the situation is under control, and now it's just a question of finding out why did this happen. What we do know is that this 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz was a very troubled young man. That is from all indications on his social media and through talking to classmates of his. He went to the school this afternoon armed with an AR-15 assault rifle, along with what one official says he carried with him smoke bombs and a gas mask, and he shot people outside the school, then went into the school and set off a fire alarm. So clearly he meant to do this. This was a planned event. And by doing so, of course, setting off the fire alarm and himself having a gas mask and setting off smoke bombs, apparently, that's what brought kids out into the hallways, and that's when they were shot. And this went on for some while. Students and their teachers, a lot of them huddled into classes, into closets to hide from the gunfire. Eventually, Nicholas Cruz left the school, authorities say, and about an hour later, they picked him up without incident, and they put him into a police patrol car, took him to a hospital. He was not seriously injured. They took his clothes from him and put him in a hospital gown, and then took him to a police station. And as you're seeing the video, you saw certainly kids running for their lives from the school or being herded out by policemen. It was such a tragic event. And now the real question is, why did he do this? And there was lots of information on social media that he was angry, that he was troubled, that he bragged about his weaponry. And a lot of people here are asking, why didn't anybody see the signs of this? Because by all indications, he wanted to do some damage.
Exactly, Andy. This is exactly what I wanted to ask you. What have the federal authorities got to say regarding the motive of the shooter?
Nothing yet. All we do know is that he bragged to friends about, apparently bragged to classmates, and may have been telling the media here that he had lots of guns. He had violent thoughts In fact, the administration of this school put out an email, apparently, to others in the school a while back that he could be a threat, and that if he showed up to school with a backpack, he was to be told to get away from campus. So even the school, apparently, by the reports that we're hearing, and we haven't confirmed that ourselves, but by the reports that we are hearing, even the school knew that he was a threat, that he was a danger. There might have been mental illness here. So a lot of people are asking why this could happen. But in answer to your question, there has not been a solid motive that has come out yet. But unlike so many other mass shootings that we've had recently in the United States, in this case, the shooter has survived, and quite well. So that's a big difference, and so authorities will certainly be asking him a lot of questions.
Andy, it would be interesting to know what the school authorities have to say, since you just mentioned that, the school authorities were aware of what was going on.
Yes, and so far the school authorities are not saying what they know, but we do know that they put out some sort of warning to either teachers, their staff members, or the school, saying, hey, this guy could be trouble, and if he comes near the school with a backpack on his back, you should alert authorities and make sure he doesn't come near the school. So there were apparently plenty of warning signs. And, this school is one of those schools here in the U.S., and many of them do this now. They actually have drills called active shooter drills in case an active shooter comes into the school. And this school, like many schools in the U.S., do have a guard, an armed guard at the school. So these are a lot of questions that are going to have to be answered by the school.
Absolutely, Andy. I completely agree that there are a lot of questions out there which remained to be answered by the school authorities. And, of course, details of the motive are also to be probed in. I'll have to request you to actually hang in there, and we will just bring our viewers a quick reaction coming in from the student who was present there during the shooting.
She got pushed into the auditorium, but she was supposed to be in the 1200 building, and that's where they said that the shooter was. That's where they kept saying the shooter was. And then they started moving us outside, and they took away our backpacks, so some kids didn't have their phones. And now I feel like this is like the meeting spot for everyone. So, yeah.
You said something about who you think the shooter is. What kind of person do you think that person is?
I don't know him personally. I heard that he was very unstable. Someone told me, this is kind of a rumor, but someone told me that when his dog got sick, instead of taking it to a vet, he just killed it. So he was definitely not the kind of person who should have been allowed to have a gun, or I heard that he was very mentally unstable. Apparently he threatened a kid last year. Not the kind of guy I would want to be around.
And now we are also joined in by Glenn Carl, former intelligence officer, who's joining us over a phone line. Glenn, this shooting is the 18th incident in a U.S. school amid nationwide debate over gun control. What is your take?
Well, it's so disheartening from, of course, for the immediate personal tragedies involved, but that's not what I am referring to, really. It's disheartening because the American political and social discourse is completely paralyzed on this point. And there is, on average, in the year 2018, a school shooting every 60 hours in the United States. And yet, whenever people say, well, we need to do something about the availability of guns, the invariable response from the gun lobby and from the Republican Party is that it's not time. Now is not the time to discuss such a political subject. We should simply grieve for the family members who have lost loved ones, which means that we do nothing, and that's exactly what will happen again. And there is a solution that would help, and it will not be taken, and that is to pass some sort of meaningful gun control. And the public will remain polarized on this and angry from every direction. And that's what will happen.
Glenn, also as a former intelligence officer, what are the kind of rules you think that, school authorities can actually implement to protect their students?
Yes. Well, by all accounts, the school that suffered this terrible event did everything right, meaning that they had recently trained the school and all of the employees, the faculty, on what to do in the event of a shooting, because such a thing is possible. And that is, it used to be flee the zone, and now the thinking of the authorities is that you shelter in place. So everyone is called into their rooms, you close the room, you lock the door, you get on the floor, you call the authorities. And the authorities who used to try to negotiate and wait to avoid bloodshed now act much more aggressively and need to go in. And everyone seems to have done everything basically according to the protocol. So they did it right. But a gun can shoot hundreds of bullets in a minute, and so it only takes seconds to kill many people, and that's what happened. I don't know beyond that. Those measures are sensible, but that's treating an event rather than trying to get to the cause and lower the likelihood that it occurs. There's nothing particularly different to do. The authorities acted properly.
Right. Glenn, also, this is coming in, at the time, there's a nationwide debate over gun control. As a former intelligence officer, what is the message that you would like to send out there to American authorities out at the moment?
Well, if only one would listen. The statistics are devastating. In any year, I used to know the statistics precisely for a given year. Let's take 1985. It hasn't, which is about the time I knew the data in my head. It hasn't changed much since then. There were 30 or 40 deaths by handguns in France in the year. There were 30 or 40 deaths by handguns in England. There were probably 70 deaths by handguns in Germany. There were 10,558 in 1985, I remember, and there were probably 11,500 or 12,500 per year in the United States. So obviously, America has a problem, and the only difference is the availability of handguns. So the solution is this. But until the National Rifle Association, which is the most powerful lobby in the United States, is in some way challenged successfully, thousands of Americans will continue to die needlessly. Since
Right.
9/11,
Glenn, I'm going to ask you to hang in there.
9/11, 550,000
Yes.
Americans have died by handguns.
Absolutely.
And about 75 have died from terrorism.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you that, the Rifle Association in the U.S. is a very powerful body, And I would actually like to bring in Andy, who's joining us live at the moment. Andy, Glenn has actually, brought out a very, very valid point, saying, that, till the time the Rifle Association is also not challenged, the rules, there have to be some very, very radical structural changes made. Glenn has been a former intelligence officer. He just joined us live from Boston. What is your take, Andy, on the ongoing debate over the use of weapons?
I think Glenn is right, certainly, that nothing will change from this. I think that what brings this kind of shooting out to people's attention, even more than previous shootings, is the fact that it happened in a school, and that will always get people's attention. But when 26 people were killed, including grade school children, in a school in Newtown, Massachusetts, back in 2014, there was legislation that was proposed to tighten gun regulations, but it went nowhere. And in fact, just a couple of years ago, there was a proposal in Washington to ban people who were on the terror watch list from owning assault weapons. That legislation also went nowhere. So a lot of people here in the U.S., gun control supporters, are howling tonight. They are saying, in an overall sense, the United States likes to think of itself as a first world power, an exceptional nation, and yet we have this problem that no other nation except third world nation seems to have, which is mass killings. They don't understand that. And the other side, it's interesting what Glenn said about the school doing everything right. The other side, those who feel that gun rights should not be touched, will say that, well, maybe if you had armed those teachers in those classrooms, if you'd given them more guns, they could have fired on this suspect. That's how their argument goes. So, you know, I think the bottom line here is I do agree with Glenn. I don't think anything will change from this. I think the heat will rise on gun control, as it always does after these shootings. But ultimately, we are just, as Glenn said, just plain too polarized to change anything.
Right. Andy, actually completely agree over there with you that we are probably just too polarized to actually change anything. Thank you so much for speaking with us here at WION. Glenn and Andy, thank you so much for joining us on this piece of news.